Hey, good morning, everyone. So let's get started with the last database today, which is our SQL database or RDS or relational database. So to understand a relational database, the concept remains the same that you go create a database which would be a database which would be of any of the six types that we are going to see, which can be MySQL, Oracle, MS SQL, then you have your PostgreSQL, you have your MariaDB, and you also have something known as a Amazon Aurora database. Now, just like DocumentDB is what MongoDB is, just like Amazon Key Spaces is what Apache Cassandra is, similarly, Amazon Aurora is an implementation of AWS inside the SQL realm. Basically, what I mean is Aurora can work as a MySQL version also, and Aurora can also work as a PostgreSQL as well. So if in case you go for these databases, you can go for any one of them. You can go either with Aurora or you can go with PostgreSQL. So that's the thing. Second part, these RDSs or relational database are similar to your document DB, not similar to your Keyspace and DynamoDB. By that, I simply mean that these databases over here are going to work on some specific server configuration that you have already pre-allocated. Yes, you can go and change them later. You can go and modify them. You can go and change them, increase the server size, decrease the server size, whatever you want, you can. But at the end of the day, you are responsible for managing the servers over there. Now, if you remember your DynamoDB and your key spaces, there you had two things. You had something about the inputs and about the outputs, or about the read capacities and about the write capacities. The reason is you were not managing the servers over there. Your simple job was to go and manage the specific input and output and just tell AWS that I would be needing these many inputs and these many outputs. How that happens depends on AWS. Similarly, over here, you just have to manage the servers. Input and output is your job to manage. So just keep that in mind. That's also a reason why in those databases, you have something known as a backup. Over here, you will be seeing something as a backup and as a snapshot. Snapshot is generally a backup for a database or a machine that you are creating. Okay, so what I'll do is, first of all, I'll go and select RDS, relational database. Now, these parts we already know, so I won't bug you much by talking about the subnet group. It has to go inside what all subnet, what all availability zone. Then you have something as a parameter group, which is simply telling you what version of database you are actually looking for. For example, most of the times it is either a MySQL server or it will be a Postgres server. Pick up any one of them and you are good to go. So in my case, I would be selecting MySQL 5.7 or 8.0. Now, why 5.7 and 8.0? If you go for MySQL actually, and you have a look at the versions of MySQL, you will realize there are three types actually: 5.7, 5.6, and 8.0. Three are there, but 8.0 is the latest one, which works sort of NoSQL. Then you have version 5.7, and then you have 5.6. So that is why AWS is also showing you only 5.7 and 8.0 inside it. Though, if you want to create a database with 5.6, you can do that as well. Next up is your option group. Option group basically is inside that database version that you have selected, what exact machines should be created for what all engines. What I mean is MySQL, here 6, 7, and 8, whichever you want to take. Now, why do I have this? Pretty easy, because I would be creating a primary machine and I would be creating a backup machine, something also known as a standby instance. Now, if it is a standby instance, it simply means that at a time or at a moment, only one machine would be working at that time. So that is what is known as a standby instance. Only one machine is working. If it goes down, the next machine will automatically come up. How this happens, we already know the concept of a heartbeat basically. So machine 2, which is the backup machine, would continuously be pinging machine 1. If in case it doesn't get a response, And second time, if it doesn't get a response, it understands that machine 1 has gone down and now machine 2 becomes the primary. And the process repeats for machine 1 and machine 2 in that sequence. So that is what is meant by the backup or the standby instance. Again, this thing depends on you whether you want to create it or you do not want to create it. The last thing is the custom engine versions. Basically, in this case, you will go and create your own version for that specific database. Now, why is this important? Just consider this. Let's say I am going for any of these Oracle machines over here. Okay. So if you have chosen Oracle and you have gone for any of these machines, now the concept of RDS is that if I go on and create my RDS or relational database, in that case, any setting changes that has to be done by AWS themselves. Now, assuming AWS does not have that version, but I still want to go and work with my RDS or relational database. In that case, what will I do? In that case, I will take help of CVE or custom engine version. In this case, the CEV over here will go and download those specific packages. Now, the concept again, it is a database, so obviously it is not working on the internet or it should not be opened up to the internet. So how will you download the packages? So here it is, you already know the answer. Anything that has to be saved inside AWS will land up inside my S3. And if it is inside my S3, I will just go and browse for the S3 file, whatever that S3 file is, and I will simply go and tell the name where the files are kept. These things should not change. Database installation file name should not change. The name of the file can change, yes. This part should not change. Name of the file can change. This should not change. Name of the file can change. This should not change. Name of the file can change. If you go and do this and you click on create CEV or custom engine version, in approximately 2 hours from now, that database should be up and running. Now, not used actually, and rarely anyone uses or talks about this, so not an interesting thing, but nonetheless you should be knowing that if in case, in at least in the interviews, if they ask that I am looking for a specific version of my Oracle database that is not having a specific security package or a patch that I need to apply, your first answer should be, see, if it is RDS, the patches would be there inside AWS. If it is a security patch, if it's an important patch, AWS would have automatically applied it. But assuming you say that it is not there, in that case, we might go and create a CEV over there. Okay, that's the concept behind this. Next, this RDS I'm not doing right now. I'll come to this one. Recommended events, you understand, right? This we have already seen inside our document DB, that a database created, deleted, destroyed, creating, deleting at the end of the day is an event. You want to subscribe to it, you can create an event subscription. Simply means I would be sending you a email on these specific emails provided any of these things are happening. So if my instances are being created or if my machines are being created, so you can select the instances and whether it is a failover or a deletion. Very simply, it means that if in case any of these events are triggered, you would be getting a, let's call it as deletion, and let's say abc at the rate of abc.com. Now you'll understand. Okay, so in case, and let's call this as delete hyphen servers. So if in case a delete server is triggered, by that I mean if any of the instance goes into failover state or maybe inside deletion state. If any of these things happen, a mail automatically will be triggered to abc at the rate of abc.com. That's pretty much it. What this event subscription means. Now, this is again a question asked in the interviews at least, that how will I be notified if my machines goes down? You have three answers. You have events, you have events subscription, and you have events bridge. Event subscription you have already seen. Events in itself is nothing. So something got deleted is an event. How do you listen to that event happens via event subscriptions over here. So whether you are subscribing to the event or not, event will trigger, event will be created. If you have a listener or a email which is listening for that deletion event, it will show up. If you don't have, nothing will show up. Nonetheless, it will always appear over here inside your events. Next up, my these interesting things, and while I'm talking about it, let's go and create a database, because creating a database will take time, and during that time we will discuss about all of these things over here. So to create a RDS or a relational database, we will just click on create database and we will select the database version that we are looking for. Now there are two options over here. You can go for easy create, in which case you don't have to apply your brain. AWS will automatically do everything for you. For example, if I go for MySQL, if I'm using a free tier, a dev testing one, or a production one. So if it is easy, name itself is telling, don't apply your brain, I will automatically tell you what to do. But assuming it is not a easy create, it is a standard create. This is where you will pitch in. Now you have to do all the settings of the database. By that I mean, I would be working on MySQL Community Edition version 5.7.33. Remember this version? You are only going to say 5733 inside the interviews and nothing else. Next up, what type of machine are you looking for? I am saying I am looking for a production machine. Okay. Call your database something. Let's call it as dev-database. Give a username and a password for it. It can be anything. The thing is that it should conform to the rules of MySQL. Remember, RDS is not having any rule for ID and password. You can create whatever ID and password you want. The only thing is that database should support that ID and password. Like if you remember inside document DB, when we were trying to do it, we tried to create a username with the name of admin and it didn't work out for us. Over here, this admin might work out for us. We'll go down, create, and we'll see for ourselves. Next one is, what type of a machine are you looking for? 4 CPU, 16 GB RAM, or 2 CPU, 8 GB RAM, or 8 CPU, 32 GB RAM. Now, this thing, honestly, you don't decide. This is automatically decided by the architects or by the customer. In your case, you would always say R5 large and nothing else, at least in the interviews. If they say why R5 large, right now your answer will be because it has more RAM. RAM means more memory, faster caching, faster processing of the data. In short, my database would be working faster as compared to my normal servers. So what will I take? R5 large. Though, if required, you can go for any of these machines also, like T3 large, T3X large, or these. Now, the question is, what is this M, what is R and X, and what is T? This thing we are going to answer from tomorrow once we get started with our EC2 instances or our actual AWS servers. For now, just know that inside interviews and production, I will always go for R5 large, but right now I will go for T3 large because it is comparatively cheaper for me. Next up, what type of volume do you need? A provisioned volume, which is a dedicated volume, or a general purpose volume? Now, this thing again, I am going to see from tomorrow once I go inside my EC2, where I will realize that, very quickly have a look. Here, what type of volume are there? IO1, GP2, and magnetic, only three. Inside EC2, I will realize it is not only GP2, IO1, and magnetic. Rather, I have GP3, IO2, SC1, ST1. I have in total 7 types of volumes. RDS is only giving me three types of volume. So starting tomorrow, we'll understand what other volumes are. For now, just know this. If you are looking for average performance, go for general purpose volume. If you are looking for very high end performance, go for provision volume. Now, what will be the price difference between them? Have a look yourself. If I go for general purpose volume, my bill is $291. General purpose. If I go for IO1, remember it was 291. If I go for IO1, the bill will come up as it is not showing me. So the thing is that if you go for this specific volume and if the bill is not showing you, no worries. We always open up the service that we like, AWS calculator. AWS calculator, creating the estimate. We are looking for RDS or relational databases for MySQL. And my region happens to be Mumbai. I am looking for, what was it? R5 large. Or in my case, I believe it was T3 large. Okay. Okay, so if I go for a general purpose volume, have a look, my bid would be $294. Okay, $300 approximately. Same thing if I go for IO1 and let's say for 1000 IOPS, my bill would be $503. So that's the difference in front of you. The pricing exactly doubles if in case you are going for a IO1 volume type over here. But then obviously it should bring in something to the table that it is increasing the price like that. This we are going to discuss starting tomorrow once we go inside our EC2. For now, just know if I need average performance, I will go for general purpose. If I need good performance, I would go for provisioned IOPS. Magnetic is not recommended only. So no point of talking about this. It is like saying inside S3, I would go for the reduced redundancy class. Doesn't make any sense only, right? Because it's pretty old. So I am not going to go for magnetic. Rather, I will go for a general purpose machine. Next up, my storage size over here is 20 GB. So if in case my database is more than 20 GB, no worries. If you enable this auto scaling, AWS is automatically going to go and increase this data size for you. 20 will become 21. If that explodes 22, that explodes 23, and it will keep on increasing. Generally, it happens since multiple of 10. 20 GB will expand to 30 GB, will expand to 40 GB, will expand to 50 GB, up to what? That maximum cap over here is up to 1000 GB. So it won't ever go above 1000 GB, but this for sure will keep on increasing 10 GB at a time. Next up is your availability and durability. Very simply put, it means whether you want to create a standby instance or not. What is a standby instance? Very simply put, I have a backup instance which is also working in parallel with my primary instance. So that if my primary goes down, my backup is still up and running. Depends on you whether you want to create it or not. And also interesting thing, this is always created inside a different availability zone only. So if your machine is in 1A, the backup would always be in 1B or in 1C. The reason is if one availability zone or data center goes down, the other ones are still up and running. But remember one thing, if you create a standby instance, your pricing goes up. How? Have a look. If your primary instance is of $143, right? The backup would also be of $143. It is not being used at that moment, that is fine. But still, I would be charging you the same price for your instance as well, $143. The reason for it, pretty easy. This is a instance which is working in parallel. Want to bring the bill down? Fair enough. Just go and say, I do not want to create a standby instance. In this case, your price, which was $294, comes down to $145. The reason is now you are not being charged for the backup database instance. Okay, that depends on you how you want to do it. Depending on the companies and the organization you do, in production, you will always create a standby instance. Non-prod, it is fine to not create a standby instance. Next up, how do you want to create your networking? Whether it is IPv4 or it is IPv6. IPv6 is known as dual stack. IPv4, if you create, you will have to select your VPC, you will have to select your subnet group and tell whether you want to make it accessible to the public or not. At least in interviews, you will say it will never be exposed to the public. In reality, you might do it, but at least in interviews, you will say never access to the public. Now, this subnet group we had already discussed over here, subnet group and parameter group. Tell me inside what network, what all subnets, what all availability zones are required. So again, you know that, so I'm not going to bug you with that. Next up, where do you want to create the machine? If you have a preference, give it to me. In this case, it is only saying 1A and 1B, and the reason would be easy actually. This subnet group that you have created, no, RDS subnet group. Okay, very quickly, let's have a look at that. Okay, this RDS subnet group that you would have created would be having only 1A and 1B. That is why it only shows up 1A and 1B over here. If in case you had gone and selected as 1C as well here, edit and say that no, I'm also looking for 1C and this subnet inside 1C and click on save. Now if you go over here and then you will have to just refresh the page. And if you refresh the page, you will start to see 1C also. Fine, let me only refresh it. So MySQL version 5733, I am looking for dev database or dev. Username is admin, password I am putting over here. Now, if you see inside this, I will start to have 1C also. Why? Because I edited the subnet group. So you can tell where do you want the primary machine to be. And then if you are creating a standby instance, it will same thing ask you for the standby instance. Where do you want to create it? Okay, I am not creating it. This part is done fine. Next up is how do you want to authenticate with password and IAM, password or password and Kerberos. Now, password authentication is the easy part. Just log into that database using the IP address and the password, and you have connected. Password and IAM, this we will do once I complete IAM. Kerberos is your directory. So basically, if you have your AWS directory, right, which would be nothing but your directory service that I am going to tell you anyways, then it can happen from that also. But more often than not, it happens via password or password and IAM authentication. In my case, I am selecting password authentication. Okay, next up, additional configuration. You have an initial database that you want to create, something like a test database, you can do that. Parameter group, option group, we automatically understand. Backups, if you want to create the automated backups that can be done, which you might remember, the backups are kept for maximum of 35 days. This inside your NoSQL, you called it as PITR or point in time recovery. In short, the database will automatically be or the database backup will automatically be created and it will be deleted after maximum of 35 days. Next up, backup window. Do you want a backup to be taken manually or automatically, in that case, tell the time when you want that to happen. Next up, encryption if you want your database to be encrypted. Next up, performance insights. Earlier it was a new thing, now everyone knows about it. This simply means what can I do to make my database perform better? Do I need to add indexing? Maybe a backup instance? Maybe another region? Maybe increase the IOPS? Maybe increase the size of my servers? Maybe increase the size of my volumes? So many maybes are there. If you just go and enable your performance insights over here, AWS will automatically advise you on what should be done to make the performance of your database better. In this case, there are these options: 7 days or 24 months. Earlier, those of you who did AWS earlier would remember, earlier you had only two options: 7 days and 2 years. But now you have the options starting from a week to a month to 2 months up till 24 months or 2 years. Now what is this? It is simply that I would be advising you on how to increase the performance of your database, and that thing or that advice, I would be saving it for whatever duration you have selected. 7 days is free tier. AWS will not charge you for that. After that, AWS will start charging you. What are the charges basically? Straightforward. I would be keeping the data inside S3. So whatever is the price of my standard class for keeping the data for 1 month, same thing I would be charging you. Okay, next up, enhanced monitoring. Now, enhanced monitoring means the same thing that I was monitoring for your database to understand how many read, write, these things. Now, these specific things I will also log. And these logs I will show you inside the monitoring tool, which I will keep it for 1 second, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, or 60 seconds. And what will I log actually? These are the logs. Audit, error, general, and slow query. What do they mean? Pay attention again. Audit log. Who logged into my database at what time, from what IP address, from what location, whether it was successful or it errored out, who tried to make a connectivity with my database is my audit log. Slow query log. Okay, first error log. Any error that happened inside my database. For example, a timeout. What is a timeout? I requested some data from the database which took me 10 minutes to fetch. It errored out. That is a error. I tried making a connection with the database. It failed. That is a error. Any error that you want to log, you can do that also. That is your error log. This at least you always log also, because you want to understand what went wrong. Next is slow query log. I made a connection with the database. I did a search on the database and it took me 10 minutes to search for that information. That is a slow query log. Last thing, if I am neither auditing nor I am logging the errors, not I am looking for the slow query, anything that doesn't fall inside any three of them is your general log. In short, a general log, simply put, is a log that doesn't fall in any of the other categories of database. Next up, maintenance. If you want AWS to automatically manage your database, maintain. Here, pay attention. I'm saying the word maintain and manage. Manage does not mean I will automatically scale up or scale down. No, you are working on database MySQL 5.7.33.101. A new update came 5.7.33.102. That would be done. But you are working at 5.7.33.101 and a new came 5.7.34.101. This will not be done. Minor updates can be done by AWS automatically if you do this. In database, generally you prefer updates not happening also. The reason is a new database version upgrade might break your application. They might introduce very or many new changes inside the database. For that reason, generally you do not want minor version or rather major version upgrades to be done. In reality, you don't even do this. But if you want, you can do that nonetheless. Maintenance, a backup would be taken, machines would be restarted. But remember, restarting the machine does not bring my database down. The reason is, if you have your standby instance over here, right? When it said create a multi-AC deployment, if you had a backup instance, it doesn't affect you, even if a reboot happens, because next machine is still up and running. If you do not have it, then it's a problem. By the way, you might have seen this in the banks also. Sunday 2 a.m. to 6 a.m., the servers would be down, any transaction would be declined. Same thing here also. Whenever and if a backup is done, you might want to go and select the preferences, or you selected what time you want, or you don't select, AWS will automatically do that for you. Finally, is your deletion protection, which simply means no one can go and delete my specific database. If everything is done, just click on create database, and now your machine, username I gave as direct. Okay. Even if I gave it as direct or whatever, no worries, because in some time inside the configuration, it will start to tell me the username. So they were giving wrong. The username was admin only. Now, if I forget the password, nothing. Click on modify and then give the new password. Right now, it is not enabled because the database is being created as of now. It is in creating state. Nonetheless, if the database is there, you can go and change anything inside the database, whatever you want. Looking at this itself, you can understand that as of now, AWS thinks the upper threshold is at 600 connections per second. Okay, but again, this always depends on your configuration. How much CPU is being used, how much free RAM is there, how many write operations are happening, how many read operations are happening, how much space is left per second, and how much connections are being created or initiated with the database at this moment. This all will show up inside your CloudWatch. Now, by the way, these are not the only graphs. You have others by going over here as well. Okay, so you can go and have a look at the graphs. So let's wait for this database to be created. While it is getting created, let's go and talk about our these queries over here. Any question if you have till now? Okay, so let's proceed then. So in this case now, if in case I have to go and create another database of a new database type, that is very well possible as well. I can go for any of these databases over here, and I can go and create n number of databases. A quick thing, how many databases can I create at max? The answer is I don't know. That would be decided by going to my service quotas. Service quotas, AWS services, RDS or relational database service. So how many DB cluster instances, subnet groups can I create? The answer is all in front of you. So how many databases can I create or a DB cluster I can create? The answer is 40 as of now. So how many databases can I create? 40. If I want to increase it, yes. Request quota increase, give the new value, and AWS might increase it for you. Next up, my databases, we understand query editor. Just like you had your SQL query, right? You can go and run the query inside your query editor. Like yesterday we did for key spaces, the same can happen for my relational databases also. But remember, this is only supported by Aurora database. What is Aurora database? Database, create. Here you had your Aurora database. Here you had your Aurora database, right? So only this database is actually supported. For others, no worries. You can always go and make a connection with your actual database via whatever tool you have. You can go and make a connection and you can see how it works. This, by the way, inside migration, I am anyhow going to make a connection inside DevOps. So you will see it over there, how to make a connection with the database. Next up is your performance insights. What is that? Performance insights, if you remember inside my RDS, it had given me the option to enable performance insights. If you go and enable, and if your database, after right now it is being created, but if at all your database is created, you just have to select over there and you have to select the instance, and that's it. AWS will automatically tell you what should be increased or how can the performance of your database be better. That is your performance insight. Next part is your snapshot, pretty easy. Backup of your database. So if in case you have any database, there are two ways. Either select here, actions, click on take snapshot and a backup will be created. Alternatively, you can go to snapshots and you can click on take snapshots. Right now, you don't see the database because it is still into creating mode. But if in case when the database is created and you go to your snapshot, in that case, the snapshot will be created from there. Now, the same thing you can export to S3, which you have seen in DynamoDB. You can take help of any backup service. You can see if it is a automated backup like right now at this time 3:06 a.m. This time is in UTC. Very quickly, time in UTC is 3:08 a.m. So AWS automatically created a initial backup at 3:06 a.m. Click over there and it will also tell you the local time zone. Don't want to do, I generally just subtract 5 in my head and I know that is the UTC time. Means 5.5 in my head and that is the time in IST. So whatever backups are there are all kept inside snapshot. If there is an automated backup, like inside snapshots, if you remember, no, my backup was automatically created, a automated backup. So the same thing would be appearing here also, automated backup. So if you want to go and restore this data, then you can just go and click on restore and this database would automatically be backed up. Same thing like your DynamoDB where you had a backup and you had the backup services. Okay, now, okay, it has been backing up, no, which means snapshots here. If in case the moment it comes up, this should also show up. Next is my reserved instance. Pretty interesting thing. Why? Let's go and see one database. Click here and pay attention now, especially at the architect level. Create database. Supposedly, I have to create a MySQL database of R5 large, let's say. Okay, how much I have to pay? Not showing up for me. Let's go and make it 5733. Okay, 5733, this, and I'm looking for R5 large. Pricing is not showing up. No worries. AWS calculator. This MySQL, and I'm looking for what? R5 dot large instance. So how much will the instance alone charge me? $394.20. $400 per month multiplied by 12. $4,800 per year multiplied by 3. $14,400 for 3 years. We will keep that in mind. $14,400 per 3 years I have to pay only for the servers. The concept is I don't want to pay so much. Rather, I go to AWS. This you have also seen. There you called it as RCs, reserved capacities in DynamoDB. So I go to AWS and I say that, see, I would be working on a MySQL instance. Which one? MySQL. Which machine? R5 large. And single machine, 3 years, I would be paying everything right now. How much I have to pay? $3,060 for 3 years. How much was I paying here? $14,400. Same thing if you make it for 1 year over here. In 1 year, how much you had to pay? Okay, removed it. Bad. I believe it was 3,600 if it is done. Okay, how much I have to pay? $402 per month. 4,800 for 1 year. How much I have to pay here? 1,507. There 4,800. Here 1,507. It is better if you go for 3 years. There I had to pay $14,000. Here I have to pay only $3,000. Effectively, you are saving 80% of the cost if in case you are going for a reserved DB instance. So if there is only one thing to learn from today's class, it would be if ever you are going with any of the databases or any of the machines inside AWS, it's always advisable to go with the reserved capacity, reserved instance, reserved machine. In short, it should be reserved. That actually decreases the price a lot for your specific machine or database, whatever you are using. Finally, is your proxy. Proxy, basically the name itself is telling you that if you have to connect with any of these databases, you can go and give a name to it. Select the database like I have this over here. Select the secret manager if you have and the role. In that case, like let me give you an example. You have to connect with your company's website at a1.abc.com or maybe dev.abc.com, test.abc.com, prod.abc.com. What is this dev test prod? Nothing but a proxy. Instead of directly connecting with the server, you are making a jump on that server via some custom endpoint. That is your proxy. The same thing can be done with your RDS or relational database and proxy over there as well. Last, go to your database and have a look at the replications. Now, if in case it is being replicated to 1A, if you want to go and view the CloudWatch monitoring, you can go and have a look at it. Initially, it went up. The reason is it was getting installed. Now it will go down. The connection to this database as of now is 0. Looking at this, you can understand no one has made a connectivity with my machine, at least as of now. Logs and events, if in case what database instance was restarted, created, whatever time is there, it will all show up over here. If you have any error logs, it will start telling you there. There are three types of logs in general: MySQL error in running, MySQL general error, and if any upgrade happened. Now you want to see that, click here, click on view, and the errors will all or logs automatically will show up to you. Now this generally people will ask you in the interviews that my database something went wrong. It is erroring out. How will I know? Your answer is nothing. Go to database, go to logs and events, go to whatever logs is there, click there, click on view. But now the next thing is it automatically updates. Fine. Click on refresh log and it will show you the log. No, I want to see real-time logs. Fine. Click here and click on watch. Now it will automatically keep on updating every 5 seconds. So this is you making a connection with the database, but only viewing the logs. That is why RDS service is preferred also. No one can directly go and jump into the database, but logs you can always go and change. Next up, configuration, apparently the most important thing for you. I forgot the password. I have to change the machine type. It is R5 large, 2 CPU, 16 GB RAM. I want to increase the size. I want to decrease the size. Fine. First, you want to change the version. You can do it from here, but do not do it actually. Never do it. Migrate it from 5733 to 34. The reason if you change it over here and an error happens, no, your fallback database is not available. Fallback as in what you generally do is you create a database of 5733. Now, if you make the changes over here only, no, what is your backup database? Nothing. Now, you might say that, yes, I will create a backup. From that backup, I will create a new database. Yes, but that process takes time. For half an hour, your database will not be available only. Your client will start shouting on you. So don't do that. Rather, what you do is from this database, you create a backup. From this data backup, you create a new database, 5733. Okay, your primary is still working only, one is still working. You go to machine 2, you upgrade your machine 2 to 5734. Then you see if it is working. Then if it is working, then go and replace your 33 with 34. That is actually what happens in real life, and this is what you should be doing also. Anyways, if you want to modify the password, that can be done. If you want to change the machine type, that can be done. Want to change the storage, the AZ deployment, network type, authentication, parameter group, backup. Now, looking at this, you can understand backup will happen at 9:24 UTC. Convert it to your own local time, add 5.5 hours to it. Okay, should be somewhere around 2:30 to 3 a.m. And then go and take the logs over here. And if you go and do that, it is effectively doing exactly the same thing what would have happened while creating the database, with the difference that in this case you can go and modify anything at any point of time. Now, if in any case, no, they say that this error you did, no worries. Error you did, fine. You do the error. You can always go to configuration and change it at any point of time. Okay. Next up is your maintenance and backups. This itself is telling you I will take a backup at 12:16 a.m. to 12:46 a.m. at GMT. Do not want to do it? Click on modify and tell me I will not take the backup. But you always want the backup to be taken anyways. Finally comes your tags over here. You can go and add whatever tags you want inside your database. And if everything is done, ideally you will never terminate your database. But nonetheless, if you want to go and remove the database, you can go and do it. For that, you will have to go and type delete me, acknowledge, and click on delete, and the database will be deleted. Last thing, I am sure you want to practice database yourself. You will do only this. Pay attention. Create database. You have two options over here. Okay. Either go for easy create, MySQL, and go for free tier where you will almost not be charged. Okay. So either go for easy create, MySQL, free tier. Yes, it will be slow because I had 16 8 GB of RAM. You have only 1 GB of RAM, but nonetheless it is free. Or you will go for standard create, MySQL, and you would only select T3 micro or T3 small. Advisable T3 micro only. If you do this, you can very well go practice for this thing today and make a connectivity with the database to ensure that you have understood how RDS works. Last, RDS is a thing that will not get you the job, honestly, because everyone expects you to know RDS. But not knowing RDS in the interviews can certainly take your job away, because everyone expects you to understand RDS or relational database. In interviews, you are only going to talk about either MySQL or PostgreSQL, any one of them. That's pretty much it inside my database. Tomorrow onwards, we would be starting with our rather most important service of AWS, which is EC2. Also, tomorrow I would only be talking about what a server is, what a computer is, what x86 is, what ARM processors is, what i386 processors is. So, in case you know what they are, and in case you are not interested in knowing what they are, you might want to skip tomorrow's class. Actual EC2 will only start from day after tomorrow. Tomorrow would be giving you the prerequisite to understand what EC2 is. So you might want to skip tomorrow's class in case you already know or you do not have any interest in knowing what x86 versus ARM is. And if in case you are not interested in knowing how Mac M1 works on ARM or Mac M2 works on ARM, and why is it that only MacBooks have created ARM machines and no other have done that? And what is this M1 and M2 that people talk about so much inside, especially Apple MacBooks? Okay, what is this M1 M2 architecture, which is my ARM based architecture? This is not x86, this is not Intel, this is ARM. So what this is, we are going to talk about this tomorrow. Any questions if you have now? uh, Nilesh, because no, here if you go for a reserved instance, actually it is the same thing like your any database or any machine you take reserved instance, because AWS understands that you need these resources. If it understands, it will always give you at a low price. This happens in the real world also. No, go to a restaurant and order something for 100 rupees. Ideally you have to pay 3000 bucks. The same thing, if you say that I will be charging or I would be giving you 2000 rupees, they will always say yes, fine, give me 2000 and then eat for the whole month. Reserved instances are chargeable because AWS knows that you would be using these resources continuously for the next 1 month. Same way, your same flight ticket earlier, if you take, it will always be cheaper. This is how the world works. Okay, fine, then let's leave it over here for the day. Have a look at these things today, and I'll